Property taxes could go up a lot for a lot of Californians who are inheriting property from their parents. Because there was a Proposition 19, that Californians voted for in 2020. A lot of people, when they voted for this proposition, they had no idea this will be the outcome. Today, we're going to review what's happening with property taxes and Proposition 19's impact. We're going to discuss with different kinds of experts across the board to find out what's happening with this and what is the solution to it.
It was sort of a deal that was, you could inherit the primary residence of your parent with certain strings attached. And those strings, which have now come to light, are very hard to meet.
We're going to be hit with a huge tax reassessment on those properties to the point where we will not be able to afford keeping them affordable rental properties.
I'm Siama Korami. Welcome to California Insider. Lalit, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We want to talk to you about a very important issue that's impacting a lot of families in California. And a lot of people are blindsided by a proposition that we voted for, Prop 19, and majority of Californians voted for, that's causing people's taxes, inheritance taxes, to go up. Can you tell us what happened with this proposition?
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and I used to call it, back when it was on the ballot, I called it the wolf in sheep's clothing. It was a proposition that took some time to get back on the ballot. It was initiated by the California Association of Realtors and the National Association of Realtors. And the whole meaning behind the proposition was to create more fluidity in the market, the real estate market. If more Californians were forced to sell their property, then it was going to do its job. But of course, you can't just come out and say that. Like many propositions, they had to find a sheep to dress up the wolf in. And the sheep was 55 and over, elderly, wildfire victims, victims of natural disasters. So they dressed up this proposition in the guise that if you voted for this proposition, you would be helping those that are disadvantaged. You would be helping seniors who couldn't sell their property because if they bought a replacement property, they were going to pay a higher property tax. So Prop 19 promised to help those seniors. If they were wildfire victims or victims of natural disaster, Prop 19 was going to help them. A lot of Californians, they ended up voting in that direction. But oddly enough, you would think that if it was something as simple as that and as nice as that it would have passed overwhelmingly. And of course, it only passed 51 to 49. And that again is a sign that there was more going on. And so that is where the wolf part of the Prop 19 comes out. And what that was is what we're all sort of faced with. When parents pass away, or even in situations where parents and children co-own property, maybe for lending purposes, the proposition means that now the property tax is going to go up the minute you take someone off that deed, or the minute you transfer a property from the parent to the child, or even in situations where a child had special needs and now the child inherits that property. The property tax goes up to fair market value. And that is the disaster that we're all sort of dealing with in one way, shape, or form.
As someone reporting on California's economy and policies every week, unfortunately, I see the middle class shrinking in California. Some of it has to do with our policies, and there is another side to this, that we are facing major inflation here and across the country. Unfortunately, the dollar has lost 10% of its value just this year to date. That's why more and more people are turning to real assets to protect their financial future, like physical gold and silver from American Hardfold Gold. Unlike paper assets, these tangible investments can't be controlled or devalued by inflation or bad policies. You can have them delivered straight to your home or securely stored in a tax-advantaged gold IRA, giving you a safe, reliable way to safeguard your wealth, no matter what happens in California or the rest of the country. American Hardfold Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of 5-star reviews. And right now, when you call, you can get up to $15,000 in free silver with your first purchase. Call 866-595-2304. That's 866-595-2304. 2304 or text Cali to 65532. Make sure to text Cali to 65532. Beat the system and protect your wealth with something real today. When you mentioned this property tax goes to market value, can you explain how this Prop 19 works?
So as we all kind of have heard about Prop 13, which passed in 1978, the voters overwhelmingly passed Prop 13 in 1978, that said, regardless of what happens to the fair market value of your property, we're only going to increase property taxes by the rate of 2% a year. When Prop 19 showed up, what effectively happened is we got rid of what was called the parent-child exclusion. And that parent-child exclusion came in 1986. It was called Prop 58, which said when the parent passed away and the child inherited the property, if it was the primary residence of the parent, then the property tax would not go up, regardless of the price. As long as it was the primary residence of the parent and the child inherited it, there was no reassessment. That was a law since 1986, regardless of the value of the home. As long as the parent lived in it as the primary residence, the child could inherit it. And so what was happening for decades was that children would inherit the property, the primary residence, and they would choose, do I want to live in it? And do I want to work it out with my siblings? Who's going to live in it? Do I want to rent it out? Do I want to have my child live in it? And there was a lot of flexibility that was available to the child in that example. And these weren't necessarily huge homes. I mean, these are everyday families across California who could take advantage of that choice, that flexibility, which essentially is what Prop 13 promised, is you're going to get the property, but you're going to pay a 2% increase a year, and that was the rules that we all sort of agreed to. When Prop 19 was on the ballot, they promised that this would stay intact. What they failed to mention is that this would stay intact, but the property tax could still go up. So it was sort of a deal that was, you could inherit the primary residence of your parent with certain strings attached. And those strings, which have now come to light, are very hard to meet. For example, the child has to move into the property within 1 year of the date of death of the parent. That's not a long time for any family to sort of deal with the aftermath of the death of a parent. But within 1 year of the date of death, you physically have to move into the property. You have to know to fill out certain forms. And if you don't fill those forms as the child on time, you're going to lose the property tax. Not only that, this is the part that I think, again, angered most Californians, even if the child knows to physically move in within a year, to fill out the magical forms by the certain deadline, your property tax could still go up in that situation. That was the problem. Because Prop 19 said, again, the strings attached, said, your property tax will stay to the same up to a certain point. If the fair market value at the time that the parent died was more than $1 million above the assessed value, then you're going to pay a higher property tax. So this whole notion that, we're not going to disrupt the primary residence, which is what a lot of the proponents of Prop 19 promised, we're not going to mess with this. They absolutely ended up messing with it.
How does it work now with the investment properties?
So really, generally speaking, with investment properties, and we should include vacation homes and secondary homes. There's a lot of Californians who have 2 primary homes, but they're forced to identify just one. So let's call all of those investment properties. What happens now is investment properties, generally speaking, are going to get reassessed at fair market value. So under Prop 19, if there's a secondary home and that secondary home is passed when the parent dies, the property is going to get assessed at the fair market value. The old rule in California under Prop 13 and the various props that came in the decades following Prop 13, again, were more lenient on those secondary properties. I think it was a well-balanced, reasoned system that they came up with. They said, in the old rules, they said, if you have a secondary property and you want to leave it to your child, you can leave it up to a certain dollar amount. What that dollar amount was it was $1 million of assessed value per parent. So if I was married and I had secondary properties, I could leave $2 million worth of assessed values unchanged. Anything above that, my kids would have to pay the difference. Again, Prop 19, 100% removed all of that overnight.
You're helping people in California with this. Can you tell us what are you hearing from your clients?
Yeah, so here are the calls that we're getting. There's a lot of misinformation. Many callers, especially the older ones, go, well, I was told that I'm under Prop 13. And we have to explain to them, Prop 13 is sort of a fiction today because it can't be read in isolation. It has to be read with Prop 19. So the stories that we're hearing are, I can't keep the family home because I moved in and I thought the property tax was going to stay the same, but now the assessor is telling me that the property tax actually went up. Is there anything I can do? That's one story, class of stories we are dealing with. A second class of stories, which again, I think the writing was on the wall, but this is the realities of how propositions work, are folks, younger Californians who have saved up to buy their first home. And when they did so because the bank said, sure, you could buy the home if your parent is going to be a co-signer on the loan. And what happened is the parent had to be on title, according to the banks. After Prop 19, when that parent passed away, that parent's ownership went to the child. That is a change in ownership. That has caused a reassessment. A third version has to do with folks who are dealing with non-primary homes. So this is a vacation home, this is a rental home, or this is the business of the parent. A lot of Californians were investors. They held a lot of rental real estate. And they wanted to pass the rental real estate. It's a family business. They want to pass the rental real estate to the children who are also involved in the rental real estate business. All of those properties, 100%, are going to get reassessed when the parent passes away. So the children there are looking for strategies. Is there something that we can do to keep the property tax the same or not get reassessed at fair market value? The problem with this is there is no good and bad here. There's just realities. The reality is when property tax stays the same as it was intended to under Prop 13, we're all winners. This isn't a rich and poor. My experience is that if you have rental properties get reassessed at fair market value, the big losers are the people who need those rental properties. It's the renters of California. Who's renting? A lot of low and middle income Californians need to be in that rental space. When they're forced out because the owners can't afford those rental properties anymore, we're all worse off. Because who's going to buy that rental property, that 40-unit rental property that was owned mom and pop, who can't afford it anymore because the property tax is now through the roof? The big purchasers are going to be corporations. They're going to change those into luxury condos. So the renters are left back in the streets. And if they can't afford it, they're moving out of the state. So when you go back to 2021, if we had that power to go back to November of 21, it passed 51 to 49. You know, if 2 or 3% of Californians really knew about the wolf in sheep's clothing, I don't think we would be here today. But the reality is if we could get this back on the ballot, my prediction is most Californians overwhelmingly are going to try to repeal Prop 19.
Now, Lalit, is there a way to overcome this? Is there any way to deal with this if it doesn't change, if the rules doesn't change? Is there anything people can do to avoid these tax increases?
It's a great question. There are very limited strategies that we have where we can still offer some hope. It's not for everyone, and it's going to depend on the numbers, meaning what is the assessed value of your property? What are you going to use it for? Are you going to move in or are you not going to move in? But there are still parts of Prop 13 that gave us, the legal community, strategies that we can offer to clients. And so, yes, the short answer is we can put some Band-Aids on the solution, and in some situations, we can still salvage the investment properties. Generally speaking, investment properties are owned not by individuals, but we put them in LLCs for various reasons, asset protection reasons or lending reasons. But for the most part, LLCs in California today are still governed by Prop 13, not Prop 19. So if we can turn the property into an LLC, we will fall still under the 1978 Prop 13 legislations. And under the Prop 13 rules, there are different rules when it's in an LLC, for example, of what constitutes a change in ownership of the LLC. So if we play around with the numbers the right way, and if we have time, this is essential. If you call the lawyer and you say, Mom and Dad is on their deathbed, is there something we can do? Probably not. But if we have 2, 3, 4 years to implement a strategy, then yes, it's inconvenient, it's expensive, and it could be cumbersome. But for some families, many families, they can take advantage of those strategies. Now, for primary residences, it's a bit easier. It's just about educating clients. If you're a child and one of the siblings is going to move into the property, and if you fill out the paperwork in time, then you might still fall under the exception under Prop 19's primary residence, but you got to know that the property tax might still go up because that $1 million cushion might not be enough. And lastly, there are really intricate rules in California called joint tenancy rules and co-tenancy rules. And if you're dealing with an attorney who is familiar with those rules, there may still be ways to salvage the property tax and not have to move into the property. So I would tell clients, yes, there are strategies out there. For me, for my law firm, for lawyers, sure, we can make some money helping clients do that. But if I had a magic wand, I would much rather go back to the old rules because, again, the real losers here are all of us, And so, yes, we can fix and respond to Prop 19, but what would be even better is we get rid of Prop 19.
You mentioned these ways. How solid are they? We are hearing that even counties have confusion about implementing these Prop 19. Can you tell us about?
Anytime a proposition's passed, there's an irony that develops, which is we go to the Board of Equalization and we go to the assessor and we say, how are you going to implement these rules? And their response is a good one. We don't know because this wasn't our idea. So it creates a window of uncertainty. And so the good news is over the course of the past 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, since we've had Prop 19, some of those answers have some of those solutions have been answered. For example, one of the things that was uncertain when it was passed is when you say a child needs to move into the primary residence, what does that mean exactly? Now we know it means that one of multiple children has to move in within 1 year of the date of death. We didn't know that for a period of time. Another thing we don't know still to date is what if the child moves out of the primary residence at some point? Can the property tax still stay the same because they moved in within 1 year of the date of death? So it's not clear. And because it's not clear, we're forced to be conservative in our advice. So we tell folks, our belief is, and I think most practitioners will say this, if you move out of the primary residence, all bets are off. The county can go back and reassess it because it's no longer the child's primary residence. Has it been stated as such? No. But in the absence of that endorsement by the Board of Equalization, then I think that's going to be the way it's going to play out.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of negativity and anxiety right now, even in a beautiful place like California. I'm constantly running to people that are facing depression, even they have a lot of things materially. No matter what you and your family are going through right now, there is still hope. Imagine surrounding yourself for 2 hours with pure beauty, amazing music, colors that we don't see in this world anymore, and a message of hope and inspiration. Shenyun is coming back to California. I've been going to the show for the last 14 years, and every time I go, I see smiles on the people's faces when they're leaving the theater. And the expressions are in a way that it's hard to explain, but there is this joy coming from inside, and I want you guys to experience that. If you want to take a break from all the negativity and anxiety that's out there, make sure to give yourself this experience. It will really lift your soul. Shenyun is currently performing in Northern California and soon will come to LA area and Southern California. Make sure to get your tickets right now before they sell out.
A performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Shenyun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
What about retail and restaurants? Like if you have a family restaurant and you own the location and parents pass it to the kids.
We're telling folks, if you have rental property, if you have a restaurant, if you have farmland, if you have any kind of business, you should take advantage of Prop 13, move the property in an LLC, and use the rules of the LLC in your favor. Again, we need time to implement that strategy. But when it's a larger commercial owner, say of a strip mall, or say of commercial shopping plazas, these are triple nets. And triple nets generally get passed over to the stores in the plaza.
So meaning the taxes and the other costs, utilities will get passed to the renters.
Correct. This has created another problem, which is if the owner of the commercial plaza don't put it in an LLC or don't know that they can salvage the property tax, their philosophy is, what do I care? I'm just going to pass these property taxes on through the triple net to my tenants. Who are these tenants? Mom and pop store owners. Where are they going to pass the costs to? The retailers. So this is the waterfall effect we get.
If people come to you guys and go to another attorney and structure this, put it under an LLC, and the taxes stay the same, is there a chance to face penalties later if the government comes back and says, you guys, this is a workaround?
There's always a risk. And so this is why it's really important to know what you're getting yourself into before you go through these strategies. Yes, we have maybe some conservative approaches to salvaging the property tax with time, but you need to speak to your lender about this. You need to speak to your insurance company about this. You need to survive the runway. And if any of those three things trip up, the strategy doesn't work. Now, where we get involved with the assessors or the Board of Equalization is if you try to do too much too soon. So if you go too fast too soon and try to do what you should be doing in 2 years and 2 days, you're running a huge risk.
We now go to James Burns, who's a estate planning attorney, to see what's happening to his clients.
Well, the first thing I'm seeing is a lot of people are unaware of it. They come in to my office thinking that they're going to just take over mom and dad's house and they're going to do what they want with it. There may be more than one sibling involved in this inheritance. And then we have to rain on the parade and tell them, well, back in around February 2021, when this law came into effect, it limited your ability to enjoy that property directly from your parents and receive a step up in basis in the property tax. So now with Prop 19, we have to inform them that only one child may move into that home and claim it as their personal residence. Then you have to run the numbers. What was mom and dad's tax base? What's the current credit? Currently, the credit with a little adjustment is about $1,044,000. And that would be above their base. And then you kind of calculate out from there if there's any overage. And roughly the overage is about 1.1% of whatever's above that credit, mom and dad's base, and that'll be the new tax base versus somebody having a complete reassessment at today's fair market value, which for most families will force them to have to sell. And they have to do that within a year period.
Do you see this is causing challenges for you and your customers, your clients? Can you tell us what you see in these situations?
Well, there's always family dynamics. So the thing that we see often, probably 2 or 3 times a year, is that there's always one sibling who remained at home with mom and dad until they passed. They now believe it'll be very easy for them to take it over as their personal residence, and the other children want to sell. And that person's a holdover, so this thing leads into family discord where now you got to practically sue this sibling, treat them like a tenant, take them to court, and try and have them removed under an eviction. The other thing is that people are, again, unaware of this law. So most people think that they're going to do as what had been done for years and years, which is we'll all hold on to the property and we'll just rent it. This is California property. Let's just keep letting it appreciate and hold on to it. Well, when you start calculating the numbers of this new reassessment, especially if nobody's going to go qualify for the Prop 19 credit, you start factoring in your insurance with insurance costs these days after our wildfires and other incidents. Then you have to now take a look at whether or not there was any loan on it. So one that we had here recently, which was very interesting, we had all of these, the trifecta. Somebody's a holdover and believes that it should go to them. 2, dad had taken out a reverse mortgage. So we have this reverse mortgage umbrella over things, which means now there's a loan and debt servicing to deal with. You're going to have the reassessment. And you've got insurance, because this person doesn't automatically get mom or dad's insurance. Everybody has to requalify for insurance these days, and it has changed within the last year.
What if none of the kids go and live in the parents' house? What will happen? Does it go to market value?
It does go to market value. It'll be reassessed fully at today's market value and reassessed, and that'll be the new tax base.
Do you see people selling now because they cannot afford the taxes? Is the taxes significantly higher?
Overwhelmingly, I think most clients are coming to the conclusion we're just going to sell it. And, I think by design, the Proposition 19 was created to place people in a position where they have to sell and create inventory in the marketplace here in California. As an example, if you had, because this is a classic example I even see in most neighborhoods down where I'm at in Aliso Viejo, which is you might have gotten into a place at $250,000. Maybe it's, as this time has gone over, it's worth $1 million. Some places are going over $1.2 million. You're going to have some overage. It could go from a person qualifying and just making things about $3,000 extra a year to $15,000. So, in most cases, we're seeing equation leaving about $11,000 or more
per year of taxes.
Yeah, type of tax burden because of the Prop 19.
And you are concerned about this. Can you tell us why?
Well, I'm concerned about it because we look back to what Proposition 13 was all about, and our ability to have some reliance on our property taxes and where it's going to go, and the freedom to exchange your property intergenerational. You work hard your entire life, you put some things aside, you maybe suffer and withhold from enjoying other things so that you can own this. You want to leave this to your heirs, your children, so that they can have a home. And they should be able to do whatever they want with it, whether that's rent it out, live in it. And that won't be available anymore because when you run the numbers purely on the reassessment because of Prop 19, the intergenerational family transfer, we used to call that the family exclusion, has been eviscerated. It's gone. You used to be able to have $1 million of credit for any other property you owned. So you and your spouse, if you both passed, you'd be leaving your children $2 million for all your other rentals or properties that you own. All of that's gone.
When people come to you, what do you recommend to them?
I'm recommending that they try and participate in local government politics and maybe seek their local lawmaker to see if there's any way to do a recall on this, because I really believe some type of mischaracterization was perpetrated on the general public, from the fact that they don't even know it exists to they don't understand how it's applied to once they learn what the consequences are, the kind of results and reactions I'm getting out of people is just staggering to me. So I'm recommending that. I'm recommending finding out if there's any grassroots organizations, because some are looking for signatures. They need those signatures badly so that they can get things on the ballot. And the only way that they're going to do that is by public participation. This affects almost everybody who owns a home here and has any thoughts, ideas, or dreams of sharing that home and transferring it down to the next generation.
We are hearing that the tenants may get impacted as a result of this proposition. So now we go to Robert Locke to see how his tenants may get impacted once he inherits his parents' properties.
My parents own residential rental properties dating back to the 1960s. And as those properties grew in value, the tax base maintained. Now with Proposition 19, when they eventually pass away, myself and my siblings will inherit those properties, and we're going to be hit with a huge tax reassessment on those properties, to the point where we will not be able to afford keeping them affordable rental properties. In one instance, actually a lot of them, the tax base will go up like $20,000 plus a year.
Wow.
So that's, what is that?
$1,500 a month, $1,600
a month that I can't roll into the rent. I mean, if we're charging $2,500 and we're going to now say, here's another $1,600. First of all, we can't do that. It's illegal. Second of all, I wouldn't do that to our tenants. So that's going to put us in a position where we're going to be forced to sell these properties. And that's something we're not interested in. We're interested in keeping these for another 50, 100 years and offering them as affordable rental properties. But with Prop 19, it's almost like we're handcuffed. Like we have no choice. Either we come out of pocket on each of those properties, $20,000 a year, and our rental or property management becomes a negative. We're making no profit. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
Tell us about these properties. How much are you charging? How big are these? And how would the tenants get impacted?
So most of the properties that we have that my dad bought in the mid to late 60s are typically 3-bedroom, 2-bath residential properties, anywhere from 1,400 to 2,200 square feet. And we've maintained these properties at an affordable rent. Matter of fact, some of our tenants have been in these properties for over 20 years.
Wow.
We prefer that because I know people that grew up with me that their parents had 1 or 2 rental properties, and they're having a turnover every 3, 6, 12 months because they're charging $4,500 or $5,000 a month because that's the going rate. And they're having this huge turnover. We're consistent with having affordable rents, fair affordable rents, and we love our tenants. They love us. Most of them didn't realize when they voted yes on Prop 19.
How much do you think the rents will go up in a sense for these properties that you guys own?
Well, for our properties by California state law, or in that particular area, we cannot raise the rent more than 10% per year. So $1,600 on a $2,500 rent doesn't do the math.
It will take you 5, 6 years of raising until you can get
250 a year, adding that 250. So it'd take 5, 6, 7 years for us to include the property taxes, but that's 5 or 6 years, 20,000 per property. And if we own 10 properties, it just doesn't make sense for us to keep. We just can't. My brothers and sisters and I, we're just normal people doing our normal work. Yeah, I grew up helping my dad with those properties. Yes, I grew up knowing everything about those properties. Yes, I know the tenants. Some of them are nurses, firefighters, a policeman. They have no idea that this is going to happen.
And Robert, you said that you guys have this philosophy of keeping the rents low so that you can keep the tenants. How much lower are you compared to the market?
So in the instance of the police officer, the property that he lives in, I believe his rent is $2,600 a month. And if you go on any of the popular websites and look at what the rentals are in those areas, they're $4,500 to $4,800.
Wow. Why are you guys doing the model you guys are doing?
It took me 57 years to realize, but my dad's actually smart. And when I was a kid, he used to tell me, Robert, I want to help good people be the most successful they can and not take advantage of them, because this is a small city, small world, small state. it'll come back to you in tenfold, whatever you do. If you do something negative or something positive, it comes back to you tenfold. And that's always been his philosophy. It's also my philosophy. And so his whole thing was ask for the rent to be a modest rent where you can pay the bills on the property, make $1 or $2 after everything's paid, and keep them in those properties at an affordable rate for as long as they want to be there. If they want to be in there for 15, 20 years, great, we're helping them. But again, I see around our rental and I see other people I grew up with, their rental properties have turnover. Who can afford $4,500 to $5,000, sometimes $6,000 as a nurse and a mechanic on a property like that? You're living to pay the rent, and that's it. And my dad is not about that. And that's why his relationship with his tenants are the way they are. They send him Christmas cards. They send him thank yous. Every time I go over there to help my dad do the annual maintenance inspections, they absolutely love him. Long ago when I was a kid, one of the people pulled me aside and said, if the world had more people like your dad, it would be a better place.
Now we go to Susan Shelley, who's part of the Howard Jarvis Association, who were the organization that championed the Proposition 13, to see what they're doing about this, if there's any solutions coming across the state to change this Proposition 19.
The first thing that's getting worked on is some legislation to fix some of the immediate problems. Prop 19 was very poorly drafted, and the assessors, after it passed, they went to the legislature with a list of things that had to be cleaned up in follow-up legislation. And the legislature did a little bit of it, but other problems persist. So fixing some of these small individual problems doesn't get at the whole solution. The whole solution is to go back to what we had under Proposition 58, which was a reasonable amount of exclusion from reassessment for properties transferred from parents to children. That was very valuable to people, and they didn't know they were giving it away when they voted on Prop 19. But some of the legislation that's going to fix some of the problems is Senate Bill 288 from Senator Kelly Sayarto. And what that does is it fixes the problem of the 1-year time clock. Under Prop 19, you have 1 year from the date of transfer. If it's your parents' principal residence and you're the child and you want to make it your principal residence, you have 1 year from the date of transfer to get that all sorted out and move in and fill out the homeowner's exemption form that you are now the owner-occupier of this property. The trouble is that sometimes people go through probate, and probate does not cooperate with that 1-year calendar. So people cannot inherit the property with the tax break because they can't take ownership within the year. So what SB 288 would do is reset the 1-year clock to start at the point where there is a court decree in probate. So when the probate is completed and someone can actually take ownership, then they have 1 year to make it their permanent primary residence in order to get that little bit of a tax break, that $1 million exclusion from reassessment that's available under Prop 19. The other thing that's happening is SB 623 and Senate Constitutional Amendment 4. And what this does is it helps disabled veterans and other veterans keep the homeowner's exemption in effect. Because currently, if you claim the disabled veterans exemption, which can be worth quite a lot of money every year, or the veterans exemption, which is worth less, you cannot take the homeowner's exemption also. The homeowner's exemption is only worth $70 a year in tax breaks. However, in Prop 19, it is the criterion for allowing your kids to inherit your house and get that tax break under Prop 19 for moving into it. They have to claim the homeowner's exemption. The parent has to claim the homeowner's exemption, and the child has to claim the homeowner's exemption. But that means that veterans cannot claim the veterans exemption or the disabled veterans exemption. That's completely unfair. So this is something that the assessor in LA County, Jeffrey Prang, has wanted to fix, and Bob Archuleta, with the support of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, is carrying that bill, and that is SB 623. So the first one is Senate Bill 288, and the second one is SB 623, and people can call their lawmakers and urge them to pass these bills. It's really important. And if you don't know who represents you, you can go to findyourrep.org www.legislature.ca.gov. And then you just put in your address and it will give you the contact information for your state senator and your state assembly representative.
And these
Give them a call.
and the representatives actually pay attention to these calls, right? Each call matters from what we have heard, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely it does. Because many times they think people don't know about these things, that they don't care about these things. But every phone call that comes in, they assume that there are many more people who feel that way and just didn't get to the phone yet. So definitely it has a big impact. That's SB 288 and SB 623, yes on both of those. And then there's a third one that's still in the works. This is from Senator Sayarto, and this would assist in situations where there's a disabled family member, a disabled child of the parent who owns the house, who is living in the house. And it's not the parent's permanent residence because it's the residence of the child, and the child can't be on the paperwork for various reasons of not being able to. So this would fix that problem. I don't think that has a bill number yet, but it's in the works to fix people in that sad situation where a disabled relative is living in the property and it's winding up excluded from the Prop 19 tax break. So these are things that the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is working on to alleviate specific problems that people are having.
Now, there are some ballot initiatives, and you guys tried one, right? And right now, some people are trying. Can you tell us what's happening with the ballot initiatives?
Well, we tried twice at the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, and we could not get enough signatures. You need, at this moment, it's based on the number of votes for the last election for governor. That it's I think 8% of the number of votes that were cast for all candidates for governor. So right now the number is about 875,000 valid signatures to get a constitutional amendment on the November ballot. And we were able to get 500,000, 550,000, but we couldn't get enough to get it on the ballot. We did try twice. We could try again. There is another volunteer effort from some of the volunteers who worked on the HJTA efforts. They are trying again. They filed an initiative. And I don't have their website handy, but they are trying, and you could probably find it with a search to get signatures on petitions. It's very, very difficult to do that. It really requires the whole state to be aware of the situation and aware of the problem. But interestingly, the legislature could fix this right now. They could fix it with a 2/3 vote in each house of the legislature. They could put it on the June ballot. They could put it on the November ballot. They could fix this problem for the people of California, because this is for regular people. This is not for East Coast billionaire trust fund baby investors. This is regular California families, and they're suffering because of this provision in Prop 19.
Susan Shelley with Howard Jarvis Association, it was great to have you back on California Insider. We'll check in with you later to see where this is headed.
Thank you, CMAC.
What do you think about Proposition 19? Do you think it was a good idea to increase taxes for the people that are inheriting properties? Or do you think it's better to keep it the way it used to be before? You can always email us at siamak@californiainsider.com or comment. We read all of your emails and comments. I'm Siamak Korami, this is California Insider, and we'll see you next time.